Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. So, continuing with the theme of the last couple of weeks, if you've been following me on social media, you will have seen that I've been putting out quite a bit about policies, terms and conditions, generally the legal compliance side of running your online business. And you probably saw earlier this month, I had my masterclass, the live version of my masterclass, Confused to Compliant, which is a fantastic masterclass. We dive deep into policies, procedures, guidelines, terms and conditions, privacy policies, all that goodness that you need in your business. So I will link that down in the show notes if you are interested in catching up with the replay of that masterclass. It reviewed really, really well. And if you want anything to know about keeping your online business legally compliant, I would definitely suggest checking that out. But keeping along that theme, I am delighted on this episode to welcome Amira Irfan to the podcast. Internationally renowned, Amira is a business lawyer, blogger and coach behind Self Guru, which is an online company that has featured around the world for helping entrepreneurs in legally protecting their businesses through its affordable legal templates and services. Amira has had the honour of helping over 50,000 entrepreneurs comply with the laws and safeguard their businesses. Her work has been featured in 200 media outlets, including Ticker News, Yahoo Finance, International Business Times, Business Digest Magazine, Authority Magazine, Thrive Global, US Times Now, and way more. I am delighted to welcome Amira to the show today, so let's dive in. Welcome to Bloggers Creating Courses, the podcast which will take you behind the scenes of creating an online course. I'm your host, Verity Songon, founder and education consultant at veritysongon.com. I'm so excited to help you create an online course that you are proud of and to be part of your journey to scale your business as an online course creator. Let's get into the episode. Amira, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really, really excited to have you on the podcast. And before we jump into talking about all the kind of legal goodness that we're going to be talking about, I'd love to hand over to you just to get you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Amira Irfan. I am the business lawyer, blogger, and coach behind aselfgrew.com, where I help entrepreneurs legally protect their business with my legal templates or working with me one-on-one. And I also help bloggers and entrepreneurs make money online based on my own experience of making 6 to 7 figures.
Yeah, because you've got an absolutely incredible story because you were a teacher before you went into
Yeah.
legal. Was that correct?
Yeah. So I've had an interesting background in the sense that I've done different things in my life. First, I was a model, and then after that, I became a teacher. And then, unfortunately, my dad's business got sued, and I was actually studying to become a doctor. So, totally different industries. But when my dad's business got sued for a legal mistake that he made, then it really just changed the trajectory of my life. And that's when I realized that there are so many other entrepreneurs that are also making similar legal mistakes, and just helping my dad navigate through the legalities of the lawsuit for like a year. It just like really opened up my eyes to this whole field. And that's when I decided that, you know what, I'm passionate about this. I like the legal stuff, and I want to be able to help more entrepreneurs, just like my dad, from suffering the fate. So that's how I got into law. And it's been more than 10 years. So yeah, it's been a really rewarding experience.
I just think that is such an incredible story for how you got to where you are now. And it must be really rewarding as well to know that you were able to help your dad out in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never wish anybody to go through that nightmare, but sometimes, it's a blessing in disguise. I do say that that particular moment in my life was truly when I found my true passion, right? My calling. So sometimes you just have to go through the setbacks in life to really realize your true purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. I really do. So, we are going to be talking about different legal aspects of working in the online world today. Now, I do want to preface this and say that what we are talking about is purely for educational purposes. please no one come after me or Amira, because we are not putting out legal advice. Amira is not here in that kind of professional capacity today. It is purely educational content that we're putting together. But I thought it would be fantastic to put together an episode around the different legal policies and the things that people sometimes think, oh, I want to put that off because either I don't want to understand it or it's not the
Yeah.
quote unquote fun side of things. So I really wanted to just dive into some, some real basics of the legal sides, I suppose, and just really kind of unearth different bits of it. And the first thing I want to start with is talking about privacy policies, because privacy policies, as we know, it's something that everybody needs on their website. But I find it's the thing that a lot of people go, I've got no idea to where to even start with putting together a privacy policy. Maybe I'll just copy and paste the first thing that comes up on Google. And you're smiling. I can tell you're thinking, no, that's the worst idea at all. So if somebody is sat there and they're thinking either I did copy and paste my privacy policy, or I've just got no idea where to start with my privacy policy, what would your advice to those listeners be?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. You said a lot of great things, and I deal with the same exact issues when I'm helping bloggers or entrepreneurs. The legal side is definitely not a fun aspect of doing business, right? But it is super important. So first thing about privacy policy, I want to start off with is, what is a privacy policy, right? Let's kind of just put it in basic terms. The whole premise behind having a privacy policy on your website is to just let the people who visit your site, or the people that purchase from you, like your customers, your clients, that what information you're collecting from them and how you're going to use that information. So if I come to your website, Verity, and I just give you my name, my email address, I've now provided what's called private information, personal information. So I have the legal right to know, what are you going to do with this info? And that's the whole point of having the privacy policy, essentially, in a nutshell, is to give people that legal notice, and it's legally required. So it doesn't matter where you reside in the world, you do have privacy laws across the world, and we're going to talk about some of them, like GDPR, CCPA, and so forth. But they really make sure that people's data, people's information like this is protected, and you have these proper procedures in place. And one of the ways you do that is to demonstrate compliance by having this privacy policy posted on your site. So when you get started with it, it's one of those areas that I definitely do not recommend that you copy paste anyone else's policies, or not even just policies, like anyone's content, any kind of content, photos, images, blog posts, because it results in copyright infringement. So under copyright law, you can't just copy someone's stuff without permission. So that's the big risk, legal risk, that you're taking by copying someone's legal policy. So it's never ever recommended that you do that, because the privacy policy and disclaimers or anything else that you post on your site, they have to be tailored to your business. So you can't just be like, oh yeah, let me just copy, because you're going to run into a legal infringement, copyright infringement, and end up owing thousands of dollars. So then the next question is, well, how do I create one? You have a couple of options. One option is you could work with a lawyer one on one to have one drafted for your site, which is obviously not the most cost effective option, especially if you're starting out. The second, which is more cost effective and easy option, is to purchase a legal template from a lawyer like me, because this way you know that all the legal provisions are in there, ensuring your compliance with GDPR, CCPA, and all these other privacy laws. And then you have legal permission by purchasing the template to be able to use that for your particular business. Does it make sense?
That makes 100% sense. And if anybody is thinking, oh my gosh, how do I get those templates? Take a look at the show notes, because all of Amira's templates from her very vast legal store, because you've got a lot of templates in there, they are all linked below. So do have a look at those. But you mentioned a couple of acronyms in that
Yes.
explanation there. We mentioned GDPR and we also mentioned CCPA. So what are those and how can they affect business owners?
Yeah, so GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. So it's an important law outside of the European Union, EU. So it sets legal guidelines for collecting and processing information from people with within the EU. So if someone is visiting your website from the EU, no matter where you are in the world, you have to ensure compliance with this law. So it has a broad reach, and it came into effect in May of 2018. So you'll need to follow certain rules and regulations when it comes to ensuring compliance. Otherwise, you risk like being fined for millions of dollars or 4% of your annual revenue. So it's a really serious law that you shouldn't take lightly if you have a website. So one of the ways that you ensure compliance is that under the GDPR, people have different legal rights when it comes to their personal information, and you include all those rights in the privacy policy to give opportunity to these people who are visiting your site from the EU, letting them know what how you're protecting their data and what those legal rights that they have, and you put all of that information in the privacy policy. So that's why I mentioned that working with a lawyer or purchasing the legal template from a lawyer gives you that protection and gives you that peace of mind, because all those provisions will be included in there if the template is GDPR compliant. And also it eliminates the room for like errors or mistakes that, oh, something is missing in your privacy policy. And the thing about it is that when I audit like so many of these privacy policies online, and I work with entrepreneurs one on one, I always find GDPR compliance to be missing. So the first step is to make sure that you include those additional provisions under the GDPR in your privacy policy. And the second way you ensure compliance is by email marketing. So you need to also make sure that if you have people coming to your website from the EU, that you get actual consent to be able to market to them. So let's say I'm giving you a free legal guide, and there's somebody from the EU and they want to download my free legal guide. That's fine, they can do that, but I also need permission to be able to then send them promotional emails, marketing emails with, so I need their consent. So you could have like a checkbox, you could have a double opt-in. You need some sort of a way for you to get that permission before you start sending them those emails. So that's another way, what we call GDPR opt-in and consent. And you also have to give them rights to be able to opt out of your unsubscribe from your emails and things like that. So it's a broad law with different aspects to it. But one of them is the privacy policy. Second is the email marketing.
I find that so interesting what you were just saying about how a lot of people miss out on GDPR. I think that's just because in a previous life, I used to do healthcare compliance, and May 2018, what a month to be alive. Like you said, GDPR came out, and I've had to write the GDPR policy, obviously not in May, we did it before May of 2018, but I had to write the GDPR policy for the organisation I was working in. Like I said, what a time to be alive. But I think because of that GDPR, I'm constantly thinking, does this fit with all of those rights? Does it? So it really, I find that really interesting that for a lot of people it's not front and center of their minds. But I suppose if you haven't been in a role where you've had to think about it, it's not going to be front and center of your mind.
Exactly. And the thing is that it was also a really confusing law, right? In the beginning, like, okay, how do we ensure compliance? So yeah, and also people have this misconception that if they're not in the EU, they don't have to comply. So if I'm in the US, then maybe I don't have to comply, but that's not true. It doesn't matter like where you're residing. If you have people coming to your site from the EU, you do have to ensure compliance. And then the second law that we kind of mentioned, the CCPA, it stands for California Consumer Privacy Act. So it is kind of modeled after the EU, but this one really affects the people that are in California in the US. But so in other words, it's kind of the same application. If you have people coming to your site from California, which if you have a website, you probably will, because you'll have, people coming from worldwide. So then you also have to ensure the compliance with this particular law by including some provisions in your privacy policy demonstrating, such as the right to have these people remove their personal information, the right to non-discrimination, the right to disclose. So the CCPA kind of gives different legal rights to people from California, and you have to include those rights in your privacy policy and also ensure compliance with the personal information that you're collecting.
I love that. I think if anybody takes absolutely nothing else away from this episode, it's to remember that just because you're not in the EU, just because you're not in California, does not mean that those pieces of legislation are not
Right.
relevant to you. I think that's a really, really key takeaway for anybody listening in there. But I think those are absolutely fantastic explanations, and just really rams home to people why they need to be making sure that their privacy policy is just on point. As you said, it's so important. Another type of document that you mentioned was disclaimers. What kind of disclaimers
Yes.
might people want to have on their business website or their blog, and why might they want to have disclaimers?
Yeah, so disclaimers, as you mentioned, Verity, when you started this podcast episode and you said, oh, this is not legal advice and it's for education purposes, that's exactly what a disclaimer is. Just the way it sounds, it disclaims legal liability. So, in other words, it prevents lawsuits and legal misunderstandings between people. And the purpose is to obviously prevent lawsuits and to let people know that, hey, I'm sharing all this valuable information because we're in the digital space. So, we're constantly sharing information, whether through blog posts or whether through coaching one-on-one or whether in us on social media. So there's different things that we're sharing, and we don't want people to take that information against us, right? And then come after us because they suffered some sort of a negative consequence, and now they want to come after you for those legal damages. And it does happen. In fact, even yesterday, somebody reached out to me on Facebook, and she had this issue going on where she was talking about a company's product, but she didn't have a disclaimer in place, and somebody was threatening to sue her because they took her recommendation and purchased the product, but then they suffered some negative consequences, and now they want to go after her because she recommended the product. So that's why it's so important to have these disclaimers in place. But not only that, you have to tailor it to your niche. So let's say I'm talking about personal finance. I need to give a financial disclaimer, right? That, hey, this is not financial advice and blah, blah, blah. And limitation of legal liability language should be in there. If I'm talking about like healthcare, right? Like some supplements I'm recommending or some dieting tips that I'm sharing. Once again, you're not a doctor, so you need to give a medical health disclaimer. So, in other words, tailor the disclaimer to what you're talking about, your niches or your industry. So, this way you can be protected, and you should always have that on your website in the footer section to make sure that people get the opportunity to be able to read the full policy. And if, God forbid, you ever run into any kind of legal issue, at least having that policy is going to help you versus having no disclaimers whatsoever.
I love what you said about making sure that it's in the footer, because I've had this conversation with people before. They're like, but it doesn't look pretty. It's not selling my service. It's not pointing people to my Instagram. And don't get me wrong, I'm just as much as the next person. I want my website to look absolutely stunning and beautiful. But I think that's really important. What you were saying is that it has to be available. You can't have people traipsing through page after page to try and find
Yeah.
something which just can't be located. I think that's so key. And it's interesting what you're saying about disclaimers as well, particularly because the first thing that popped into my mind was affiliate disclaimers, because we know
Yes.
a lot of people in the blogging world and the digital space, we all have, well, I say we all have, but a lot of people have got affiliate links. So,
Yeah.
for example, I've already talked about your templates being down in the show notes. Those are affiliate links. I'll help my
Yeah.
hands up and say. So, could you maybe, because I think sometimes people get a little bit confused about affiliate linking with like the disclaimers around affiliate links. Could we delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So affiliate links also require what's called an affiliate disclaimer or affiliate disclosure that you may have heard of. So under the Federal Trade Commission, the agency that regulates consumer privacy, you have to give, it's legally required, so you have to give an affiliate disclosure if you're going to share affiliate links. So for example, I have a blog post which has affiliate links. Then you want to first make sure that you give what's called an affiliate disclosure at the beginning of the blog post, so this way people know right away that, hey, there will be affiliate links in there. But now a lot of times the question I get is, what does that language look like? So it, just to give you an example, you want to say something along the lines of, this blog post may contain affiliate links, which means that I will earn a small commission if you purchase through my link at no extra cost to you. See full disclaimer or disclosure policy here. And that here should link to that disclaimer page that we just talked about, that you are going to link in the footer section. So that way people get the opportunity to read the full policy. But you have to give this mandatory language because, once again, the whole premise behind it is to just be transparent with your audience, and it's not enough to just say, hey, this blog post contains affiliate links, because if I'm not a blogger, or I'm not in the digital space, I have no idea what affiliate links means, right? So you have to clarify and go the little next step and say that, hey, you're going to earn a commission, because that's the whole point of affiliate links, right? That you're going to earn commission from sharing third party links and products on your site. So that's what you have to do in on your website. And also in that disclaimer policy that we talked about, you also have to give what's called an affiliate disclaimer to limit your legal liability, because you're sharing all these wonderful products, but you don't want someone to come after you for any kind of legal issues associated with that. So you want to be able to say that, hey, I'm sharing all this information, but what happens after you leave my website to purchase from this other party is between you and that person, not me. I'm just a middle person kind of recommending these products based on my experience. So you need to clarify and give that all of that stuff in the policy.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the example that you were saying before is don't think it's never going to happen to me, because you never know
Yeah.
how people are going to interpret, as you said, the affiliate programs or whatever it is that might that might come with that sale, as you said, with that example of somebody reaching out to you
Yes.
just this week. And I bet they probably thought, this is never going to happen to me, because none of us go into business thinking, oh yes, that time that I get sued in a couple of years time, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, exactly. And I have had people um, run into all kinds of issues with this, like whether it was coaches, whether it was bloggers, whether it was freelancers. And then, it's like, I wish that they would have these policies in place from the beginning instead of after the fact. So after running into the legal issue, you try to put this stuff on, it's not going to help you as much. I mean, it's going to help you for the future, but it's always great practice to make sure that you have this stuff from the beginning.
Absolutely. So, if we've got listeners who are currently listening to this episode and thinking, oh my gosh, either I've got nothing in place because I'm right at the beginning, or I've got nothing in place just because, or I'm now thinking that I kind of maybe threw things together maybe a little bit quickly, maybe after listening to this, I do need to start reviewing what I've got in place. What would you recommend individuals do after listening to this episode?
Yeah, great question. So the first step is that if you have a website, there are three things that you should absolutely have on your site. Number one, we talked about the privacy policy, right? So that's the first thing you should do to ensure compliance with the different privacy laws out there. And as I mentioned, it's super easy to do that if you get a template from a lawyer, so you don't have to sit there even waste any time. So for example, I have thousands of customers and they all tell me that they get done in 15 minutes. Why? Because I've made the process super easy. The second thing that you need is what's called a disclaimer policy on your site. So that way you could cover yourself for any affiliate links, affiliate disclosures, as well as, limit your legal liability for the content that you share with the world, anything that you publish. The third thing that you should think about also having, and this is not legally required, but it is something that I highly recommend, is having terms and conditions on your website. So, terms and conditions, think of them as your website rules and regulations, like such as, if there are any kind of issues with your customers or your readers, these are the terms that are going to dictate how that legal issue will be resolved. So that's the whole purpose of having them, and also where the legal issue will be resolved, right? Because we're all in different countries, different states, and different places. So you want to make sure that your particular country's laws govern, and you put all of that in the terms and conditions. So that's another reason why you should have them. And also, if you're selling something, then it's a no-brainer to have terms and conditions, because it's going to outline your refund policy, your exchange policy, and so forth.
Absolutely. I love that advice so much. I was talking to somebody just the other day and they were asking me, how do I put my terms and conditions together? What do I put in them? And I was like, well, I
Yes.
can't really tell you that, because I can show you what's in my terms and conditions, but that I've tailored and I've adapted to my brand and my website. I was like, I can give you points of things to have a think through, but really it's completely up to you. And then they turned around and said, well, should I have a refund policy? And again, I was like, well, that's completely up to you. You've got to look at, how you want to stage your brand, how you want to stage your products and what have you. And I think it goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning of not just copying and pasting whatever somebody else has as a good idea, and really thinking what is relevant for my brand, for my blog, my business, whatever. however it works there. I think those tips though are so key to, even if people have, really got things in place, if they've been going for a while, just to go away and just review that privacy policy, look at those disclaimers, look at those terms and conditions. So one thing that I always recommend to people is just to go through your policies and your terms and what have you, even just once a year, just to really keep them fresh in your mind and make sure that what they contain is still relevant to your brand. I don't know if you have any opinions on that, or any thoughts on updating documents.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one thing that you should do is review them, on an annual basis to see if anything has changed. And also laws sometimes change. Sometimes there are legal provisions that need to be added into the privacy policy, for example. So you want to, like, the CCPA is not that old of a law. So when that came into effect, we all had to update our privacy policy. So yeah, it's definitely highly recommended that, number one, you look at the policies to make sure that you're ensuring compliance with the different laws and regulations out there. And the second thing is, when it comes to terms and conditions or disclaimers, sometimes things change in business, right? Like, I might be talking about one topic, but then a year from now, I might be talking about another topic. So then you want to make sure that your disclaimer also includes those other topics, so that way you can limit your legal liability to those particular issues as well, instead of just what you started with. And then same thing with terms and conditions. In the beginning, you might just be sharing affiliate links, but later on you might create your own products or services or something, and so you are going to have to update your terms and conditions to reflect those changes, right? Because now you have new products or new services that you're offering, and people need to be able to see what the terms are around those services or products. So yeah, it's definitely a great idea, once a year, or if it's not once a year, at least when all these changes happen, you should be thinking about updating your legal pages or policies at that point.
I love that. We have had so many amazing tips that have come out of this conversation. It's been incredible. If I was listening to this episode, I'd just be sat there with a notebook, just scribbling everything down. But if there is one thing that listeners take away from this episode, what would you say that it should be? What would your key takeaway be?
So I always say this: legal is the glue that holds your business together or keeps your business together. So it's something, unfortunately, we as a family learned the hard way, right? By not having my father got into a legal big issue, and it was a $90,000 lawsuit, simply because he did not use a contract with the person he had hired. So imagine losing that much money, sleep, and the whole year that we were fighting this lawsuit for just simply not even using a contract. So that's a mistake that I feel like, you know, so many other entrepreneurs or bloggers also make, is that they don't protect themselves, right? And they don't take the legal steps that they need to take from the beginning. And then when something really goes south and something major happens, that's when you go into this panic mode and you start rectifying things. But it's kind of like, it defeats the purpose. And that's why I say that legal is the glue that holds your business together, because when you have any kind of legal violation, it's going to be costly, it's going to be time consuming, and it's just going to be such a stressful event in your life, and it affects not just you but your whole family. So my advice would be to always make sure that you covered yourself legally, because you're working day and night growing this blog, growing this business, and you owe it to yourself to make sure that you are protected, your family is protected.
Absolutely. I love that. That's such a key takeaway. Well, Amira, like I said, we have covered so much. So if anyone wants to catch up with you, connect with you online, find out about your products, how is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so just simply visit my website, www.aselfguru.com, and I have a free legal guide that kind of walks you through in more detail some of the key issues and legal mistakes that I see bloggers and entrepreneurs making. So I would love for you to grab the free legal guide. And also, you can connect with me in my Facebook community. It's called A Self Group Biz Blog Community, or you could follow me on YouTube, where I share lots of helpful videos and on business tips, legal tips, and so forth.
I love that. And we'll get all of that linked in the show notes down below. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been, as ever, an absolute pleasure for having our wonderful guests come onto the show. But no, thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed myself.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. leave a rating and a review. Ratings and reviews help us to reach more people who want to build and scale their online course, so you're really helping to widen the support for our blogging community. To catch all of the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @VeritySongon. I'll see you next time. Happy content creating.